To be India's Prime Minister is one of the most powerful positions in the world, but it's also one of the most difficult jobs in the world. I'm Barkha Dutt. You're with the Mojo story. In a few moments from now, we'll be talking to the author of a fascinating, compelling new book that asks that most philosophical but also meaty of all questions: how do prime ministers decide? The book takes you deep inside decision making in the corridors of power, also talks about the loneliness of being right at the top, but also looks at the tenures of six different prime ministers of India and some of their most controversial, contentious, dramatic, cataclysmic decisions. It is a must read book for anybody who's interested in Indian politics. It is based on hundreds of first person interviews and the author's own experience as a veteran and leading journalist of India. Let me welcome to the program now Neerja Chowdhury, who's, of course, a columnist, a political analyst, and somebody with decades of experience. And how that experience shows in this book is really fascinating, Neerja. It is an unputdownable book, and I know that's a cliche that is used for so many books, but I truly mean it. It's an absolutely fascinating book. And let me let me start actually with what many people today feel, that our present prime minister, whom you have an epilogue on, and you say that you need the benefit of hindsight to really write about him, and Indira Gandhi. These parallels have been drawn again and again and again and again. In the course of researching your book, despite the fact that Karan Singh told you that Narendra Modi wants to be like Jawaharlal Nehru, do you feel today more than ever before that if there's one person or any person that Prime Minister Modi has modeled himself on, it is Indira Gandhi?
I think there are many parallels between Narendra Modi and Indira Gandhi. We know them. Both are strong prime ministers. Indira Gandhi was a strong prime minister, head of majority government. So also is the case with Narendra Modi. They had very powerful prime minister's office, and they moved through the PMOs. Indira Gandhi, had a between what I call the golden years between 67 and 73. She had P.N. Haksar, who headed the Prime Minister's office, and she had a coterie of what was called the Kashmiri Mafia. These were powerful, able bureaucrats through whom she ruled. Later, she depended on Sanjay Gandhi, but so also Narendra Modi. He rules through the Prime Minister's office. Decisions are made there, often passed on to the ministers to execute. But his officials are much more low-key, much more under the radar. So that is the difference. But I would say Narendra Modi has taken a leaf out of the book of many prime ministers, not just Indira Gandhi.
And we'll get to that, but let's talk about Indira Gandhi for a moment. And your book throws up some very interesting points of analysis. One of the things that you say is that after the emergency, Indira Gandhi, having lost the Muslim vote because of the enforced sterilization program of Sanjay Gandhi, now needed to Hinduize herself. Can you explain that?
Indira Gandhi had put the RSS chief and many RSS workers in jail during the emergency. And the RSS leadership was in touch with her and had written several letters to her that I have cited in my book. And they have also come out in earlier books. But she did not meet them. Then they moved through Vinoba Bhave, and Vinoba managed to soften her a little. It was only just before the 1977 elections that she reached out to them. And she said, Sang Chunav se alag ho jaye. And they wrote back saying that decision had been made to support the Janata Party, the opposition, and they would be in touch with her after the elections. After the elections, it was a different story. She'd been routed and Janata Party had come to power. But during those years when she was out of power, She Hinduized her persona, her politics. There was no major temple in the country that she did not visit. And she realized that she had lost the support of the Muslims during the emergency because of the enforced sterilization, a policy pursued by Sanjay Gandhi. And she needed to somewhere make up. And the RSS was also in touch with her during this period. She never met them. Neither did Sanjay Gandhi meet them, but they were in touch with both. And she had said privately when she won 353 seats in the 1980 elections, when she bounced back very convincingly, that part of her victory but she could attribute to the support of the RSS. Later, of course, 1984 elections, we know that the RSS openly supported her. But in 1980 elections, that she got such a number which was larger than the number she got after the Bangladesh war, that election. So
Can
she
I can I can I ask you to talk a little bit more about, you make this reference in your book that the RSS leaders made many overtures to Indira Gandhi, and today you're saying, and you write in the book, that one of the reasons that she was able to bounce back was because she had this support. Why did the RSS make these overtures to Indira Gandhi? Was it because she Hinduized herself, as you call it?
yes,
Explain
I
that.
think the RSS had been uh, there was admiration. 1971, when she carved out Bangladesh from
Yeah.
Pakistan, she played a very critical role. They admired her for it. They wrote to her about it. 1974, when she did the nuclear test, they admired her for it. So they admired her as a strong, powerful leader. And then when she began to Hinduize herself and visit these temples, they made this comment, Indira Gandhi sabse badi Hindu hai. So they felt she could be the face of the Hindu politics that they wanted to pursue. And one other factor, of course, was that Atal Bihari Vajpayee at that time, the Jansangh had merged its identity in the Janata Party, but he was trying to secularize his image. He had written an article openly critical of the RSS and asking it to open its doors to the non-Hindus. Plus, in 1980 elections, the Janata Party decided to project Jagjeevan Ram as its prime ministerial candidate. And that did not go down very well with the Jansangh base and the RSS base. So they were looking probably at an alternative figure who they could back and who would fulfill their agenda or pursue their agenda.
But isn't that ironic that you had Indira Gandhi trying to Hinduize herself and Atal Bihari Vajpayee trying to secularize himself?
That's right. That was the politics of that time. Absolutely. And in 1980, of course, Advani and Vajpayee formed the Bharatiya Janata Party. And Gandhian socialism was the policy Vajpayee pursued. And 1984, the BJP was left with only 2 Lok Sabha seats. So that policy did not pay them dividends at all. But certainly, she tried to use the RSS and the RSS tried to use her. It worked both ways.
Now it's quite ironic because if we take an example from more recent contemporary politics, Pranab Mukherjee went to the RSS headquarters, and the present Congress, of course, thought that that was a terrible thing to do. But here you're talking about Rahul Gandhi's grandmother effectively doing business with the RSS.
Look, Indira Gandhi, she understood power and she understood statecraft. And if you had to run a country like India, you needed to know about groups that were opposed to you. You needed to have all the information. You needed to know how to handle them, when to do what. So I think from the early 70s, she had her own, and I've said this in the book, she had her own independence channels to the RSS, which gave her information outside the intelligence network. And
Now, your book says that Indira Gandhi, at one point, the two characteristics that defined her were religiosity and nationalism. These are the exact two traits that I might use to describe the current prime minister.
Yes,
religiosity and nationalism.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I would say, Barkha, but what she did very skillfully was to come across as pro-Hindu and pro-Muslim. She was neither anti-Hindu nor anti-Muslim. That was a very skillful navigation that Indira Gandhi managed to do. And that
So
was
she
something Rajiv Gandhi didn't manage to do. And I think successive prime ministers, Narasimha Rao also didn't quite manage to do that fully. She was the
so
one who did
she
it very
so
well.
so she managed to Hinduize herself without appearing anti-Muslim.
That's right. And the Muslims went back to her in 1980 also. Some Muslims went back.
And one of the things you say is that she was able to win after the emergency because she reached out, among others, to the man who had defeated her, the ignominious defeat at the hands of Raj Narayan. Indira Gandhi, at one point, I think, according to your book, tells Ambika Soni that I don't want to see your crying face. I don't want to see your dejected face. Basically, get ready to fight another day or leave politics. If you can't
That's
face the
right.
heat, get out of the kitchen. Right?
She said, I want to see all your 32 teeth. I don't want
Yes.
to see this long face. Otherwise, if
Yes.
you don't feel up to it, then you can quit politics. So yes, she decided to fight back. And what has fascinated me always is why she went in for election, and that continues to be a part of the debate till today. But how she came back to power in 33 months? I think very few leaders, hardly anyone that you can think of, would have done that, having been routed all over North India. And that was, real politics at its best or worst, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about her weakness. Her fatal flaw, her fatal weakness was her son Sanjay Gandhi, right? And I think you say that they were, he was the one who really, in a sense, defined decisions that she would take, mistakes even that she would make. And there's also a very, very interesting anecdote about how Sanjay Gandhi dies. Sanjay Gandhi actually dies, of course, in a crash. But Indira Gandhi, his mother, is urging him not to go up in the plane, and she is basically there is a rumored Janam Patri that actually says that it's not auspicious for Sanjay Gandhi to go up in that crash. Madhav Rao Scindia, who's supposed to travel with Sanjay Gandhi, doesn't eventually take that flight. Tell us that story.
The Chamunda story, yeah? Is
Yes,
that what you're saying?
yes,
Just before that, I want to say, Sanjay Gandhi was responsible for a defeat. He was the extra constitutional authority in the emergency. Sanjay Gandhi
yes.
was really responsible for a victory in 1980. And some of the opposition people had said that Sanjay Gandhi had a Machiavellian mind. We had nobody on the opposition side who could match that. So anyway, after she won in 1980, she had decided to go to Chamunda. She believed very much in the Chamunda Devi and would send money there, and Prasad every month she would send money there, and Prasad would come to her from the temple. And somebody decided for her to give Chamunda a miss. They were coming from Jammu, I think. And a day later, Sanjay Gandhi crashed in this new plane that he had acquired. And then she asked these people who had gone and waited for her. Of course, the Himachal chief minister with his entire entourage was there, and they'd done the puja, etc., and were coming down and were told Sanjay's plane had crashed. So she asked them, was it because of this? So somewhere she internally believed that, and she was superstitious enough, obviously,
Yeah.
that it was because of that. Then later, 6 months later, in December of that year, 1980, she went back to Chamunda. And the way she did the mudras and the puja and the matha tekna, the pandit's hands shook. And she just wept and wept and wept. And then the pandit told her, you're not to cry anymore. You have that many crores of children now that you have to look after. And then she came out of the temple and she planted trees, which, the tree planting was part of Sanjay's program, 5-point program. And then she came back, and that day she addressed a meeting in Delhi, and she called Rajiv Gandhi to the stage and introduced him to people who were there. And the politicos made a mental note of it.
It's fascinating detail in your book. But before we come to we'll come back to Rajiv Gandhi and all the other prime ministers. Do you think, when you talk about Indira Gandhi trying to Hinduize herself, do you believe her grandson Rahul Gandhi is trying to do that today, to Hinduize himself without being anti-Muslim?
Yes, I think this he is the temple hopping, but he's not being. I don't know how seriously he is being taken in that by the
And,
Hindus.
and why is that? Why do you think that is? What is the difference?
I think probably she believed in it much more than I cannot speak for him, Barkha.
Yeah.
Faith is a very personal thing, so you
Yes.
cannot speak for another person. But as far as people are concerned and how they view it, or maybe as somebody, a pandit at the Ujjain temple told me, it's very good that he's going to the temple. Maybe it's what he called bhasha ka lafra. He's not able to communicate.
Bhasha ka lafda is a great phrase, where you're basically saying that connect that you need. You think his grandmother certainly had it. Now, there's a very very interesting section in your book, and I'm jumping generations here, where you talk about how Sonia Gandhi was almost going to become prime minister, but it is her son Rahul who actually stopped her. And Natwar Singh relates this story in your book. And basically, Natwar Singh recounts that Rahul Gandhi actually told his mother that I will do anything. And I think we have those quotes up, if we can bring them up. I will do anything to basically stop you from becoming prime minister. I will take drastic steps if it's needed. Tell us this story. Why did Rahul Gandhi? Why was he so adamant? Because tomorrow Rahul Gandhi himself could be prime minister, but he was absolutely adamant per your book that he would take any measure, and that his sister then comments that when he says he will take any step, he means it. Talk a little bit about this.
This is the time when she had been elected leader of the parliamentary party of the Congress. And she'd had this dinner of other party leaders that decided to form UPA. And soon after that, this meeting took place in Janpat. And Natwar Singh says that he was looking for Dr. Manmohan Singh, so went to Janpat, and because he had easy access, he was taken into the room. Dr. Manmohan Singh was there, Sonia Gandhi was sitting in a chair, Priyanka was there, Suman Dubey arrived soon after with family friend, and then Rahul walked in. And Rahul said to her, what you quoted just now, and that my dadi was killed, my father was killed. In 6 months, you are going to be killed. And I'm not going to allow you to do this. You have to take 24 hours to decide. And otherwise, I will do something drastic. And she was quite distraught. And she went in, then she went out to a meeting. Senior party leaders were waiting for her. And I think by the time this meeting took place, she had made up her mind that she was not going to take up prime ministership. And she had told them that her suggestion was that it would be Manmohan Singh.
But suppose there's another section, and then I'll club both of those together and ask you my question. She also seeks counsel and the blessings of Vajpayee. That's something your book talks about. And Vajpayee tells her, former Prime Minister Vajpayee tells her, I would advise you not to become Prime Minister. You have all my blessings. Mera Ashirwad aapke saath hai. You have my Ashirwad in abundance. But don't take the prize. Don't take it, because you will be dividing the country. You might even divide the bureaucracy. Tell us a little bit about this conversation. I found it fascinating that today this kind of cross-party dialogue would never happen. This conversation that takes place between Sonia and Vajpayee. Please tell us more about this.
Yeah, this is after she was elected leader of the Congress Parliamentary Party, that both of them spoke. And she asked for his Ashirwad. You're right. To do that, from your opponent is a big thing. But you must also remember, when the parliament was attacked, she had called up Vajpayee to ensure that nothing had happened to him. And he was very touched by that. So they had a very cordial relationship, even though they were opponents. And then Vajpayee told her this, what you have just said, that you have my Ashirvad in abundance, but I would advise you not to take it up because it would divide the country and the civil services. And again, for somebody who was about to become prime minister, for an opponent to give that kind of an advice was also very unusual. But you
But
know,
you know
this.
what? But what flows from both of these stories, Neerja, is that Sonia Gandhi was ready to be prime minister. Now, we all remember that very dramatic abdication, all the Congress leaders begging her, no, ma'am, please, we need you, we want you. And she said, no. I think she said, my inner voice will not allow it. You know, I'm paraphrasing here. But your book reveals that perhaps it was in the end her son's adamant refusal and his threat that he would take any drastic step needed to stop his mother that probably proved to be the decisive factor. And short of Rahul Gandhi's opposition, perhaps Sonia Gandhi would have opted or had reconciled herself or even maybe wanted to be prime minister.
I think my own assessment, talking to many people, is that she was set to become prime minister. And even before the election results, the other books have documented this. Ahmed Patel had reached out to VP Singh and others to, test the waters for her to become prime minister and seek their help. That apart, I think her son, somewhere the mother in her overpowered the politician in her. And had Rahul not done what he did, she might not have been party president for 20 years after that. And
Yeah.
accepted in the party and accepted in the country. Today, she's the tallest leader in the Congress party. And it is because of that one sacrifice that the country saw that she gave up prime ministership. Few have done that. That made her so acceptable in the country. Otherwise, the BJP was attacking her for her foreign origins all the
But
time.
left to herself, you say that it's your understanding that she was set to become prime minister. Uh,
Yes.
so therefore, a lot of people would now question that abdication story.
Yes, I mean abdication because of sacrifice and all that. Look, she's a politician. She was all set to become. The mandate was for her. The UP had wanted her. In fact, VP Singh and Somnath Chatterjee told me at that time. I remember this conversation, reinforcing what is in the book, saying that we wanted her. Everybody had agreed. What do we do if our children don't want it? Both VP Singh and Somnath Chatterjee. This is a personal conversation with them.
Yeah, interesting. Now you talk about VP Singh, and for a moment, I know I'm crisscrossing generations here, but VP Singh's tenure actually changed politics. And what really stands out from your book is that it isn't the BJP and the rise of Modi that has inflicted as much damage on the Congress and its politics as VP Singh. VP Singh's gathering and galvanizing of left, right, and center, as you call it. VP Singh sort of weaponizing the Mandal Commission report. Talk a little bit about how VP Singh changed not just the course of India, but the fate of the Congress party.
Look, many Congress leaders have left the Congress party, right from Ramakrishna Hegde to Chandrasekhar. Chandrasekhar is slightly in a category apart, but Mamata Banerjee, Sharad Pawar, Jagan Reddy, many have left. And they went on to become chief ministers of their states at the head of regional parties. VP Singh was the only one who broke away from the Congress and created a national alternative to the Congress and replaced Rajiv Gandhi, who at that time had 414 seats,
Yeah.
unprecedented number of seats, as the Prime Minister of India, all within just over 2 years. So, and what another thing that he did, as the weakening of the Congress never got a majority after that. Narasimha Rao came with a minority, he broke other parties and got a majority. And the Nehru Gandhi family never ruled India after that. The other thing, of course, he did, which he was very proud of and would speak of, was that he brought regional parties into national government and gave them a stake in the nation, not just a state party. DMK had not won any seats, but DMK was part of his government. So he used to talk of this very often.
But this debate, it carries on even today. Like the BJP's OBC leaders in particular like to say ki mandir bhi or mandal bhi, they are not at odds with each other. But and this has been long a debate that has raged in Indian politics and an understanding of Indian politics ki mandal kamandal sort of narrative that the BJP has now fully embraced. Can any party not embrace it now? It is almost every party's narrative, and VP Singh in a way singularly brought that as an element into Indian politics.
That's right. VP Singh he brought in Mandal, OBC empowerment, which has been irreversible. Every party has had to take it a step further, not only accept it. And therefore, can you imagine today, had Mandal not been enacted and accepted, maybe BJP would have been a Baniya Brahmin party, not the party it is. With Prime Minister Modi now talking about the most backward, he's talking about Pasmanda Muslim, they're all talking of Mahadalits and Dalits. So power is devolving.
Yeah,
And that is
it's
the way
very.
it is. That is the way it
Yeah.
should be in a democracy. The communities that have been on the peripheries now want their share in the power structure, not tokenism.
I think the legacy of mandalized politics is here to stay, and there's a large degree of consensus on it. What there isn't consensus on is Hindutva vis-a-vis secularism. And you titled the Rajiv Gandhi chapter very interestingly as the secular prime minister who effectively could not be secular. And you look at, Ayodhya, the Babri Masjid, the locks, the unlocking, you raise a question. Was it Arun Nehru? Was it Rajiv? And then, of course, there's the Shah Banu legislation, and you actually talk very interestingly about how, of course, when Rajiv Gandhi's government brings in a legislation to overturn the Supreme Court's decision to give a poor Muslim divorced woman basic alimony, for whatever reason, basically quoting the Hindu sentiment, the Muslim sentiment rather, the Muslim orthodoxy, Rajiv Gandhi overturns this. So he's trying to play with both communities, court both communities politically. Now, you write about how Sonia Gandhi had reservations over this bill. Talk a little bit about that.
This is something DP Tripathi, who became an NCP leader, very leading MP, no longer alive, who told me this. And he was very close to Rajiv at that time. He was in and out of their home and advising Rajiv. And he told me that he had himself heard Sonia say that, Rajiv, if you cannot convince me of the Muslim women bill, how will you convince the country? And the bill was brought to undo the Shah Banu judgment, which was to give alimony to this old Muslim woman. And the courts had initially given her only rupees 25 per month. Later, it became 179 rupees. And then the Muslim community was up in arms, and Rajiv tried to balance this by getting the locks at the Ram Janmabhoomi Babri Masjid structure open, which was done. And then he fell between two stools. He pleased neither community. And of course, the BJP and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad tasted blood that the mandir could be built. And of course, the politics of the 3 decades after that, we know what happened. It led to the rise of the BJP in a phenomenal way.
So you think that maybe if Rajiv Gandhi had not gone against the Supreme Court judgment, maybe the triple talaq judgment would have played out differently today. Maybe he would not have felt the pressure to unlock the locks at Ayodhya. Politics might have been very different had he not made that one singular error that he could not even convince his own wife of.
I would say it wasn't a very easy decision, Barkha.
Why?
Because the Muslim community was agitated. And Muslims had supported, as I quote M.J. Akbar and others saying in the book to Rajiv, the Muslims treat you like family. What happens if you don't do anything? So he was buffeted around, to do it, not to do it. This went on for many, many months. And to lose the support of the Muslims was not an easy decision to have taken. So I think he didn't understand the hold that caste and community had on the Indian psyche. So certainly it required huge courage. He could have done it, yes, what you say, because he had this absolutely brute majority, 414 seats. So
Yes.
even unpopular decisions he could have taken, reached out to the Muslim community, but that is not a route he took. But
Hmm.
I do say that it was not an easy decision.
But imagine that Sonia Gandhi told him that if you can't convince me, how will you convince the country? That's quite something. Let's talk a little bit about Narasimha Rao. Probably the most opaque, hard to decode prime minister that India's ever had, who turned not taking decisions into a fine art. And you and everybody, and you included, talk about his inaction on preventing the demolition of the Babri Masjid in Ayodhya. You also raise a question, was he in the know? Was it not just inaction? Was this a pact that he had with the right wing? What is your own conclusion?
Look, I found no evidence that he actually colluded with them to bring down the mosque, but that he had an idea that it could be brought down, yes. So was he complicit? Possibly, yes. And what he said to this group of journalists led by Nikhil Chakravarti, editor of Mainstream, who was also a friend of his, uh, and this was a few days after the demolition. Nikhil Chakravarti said to him, "So we hear you were doing puja that day when the masjid was coming down, and other people believe that he was sleeping." This was the buzz in Delhi, if you recall. And he was provoked enough to say, "Dada, I was born in Rajniti. Do you think I don't know Rajniti? I allowed it to come down." And words to the effect that it would take the winds out of the sail of the BJP. This festering sword would be taken out. So maybe that is what he believed. And during his term, Barkha, Mandir was put on the back burner. And 1 year down the line, the Congress won elections in North India. Maybe while the Hindus wanted the mandir to be built, maybe there was a sense of guilt that they didn't want it done this way, the masjid to be brought down in the way it was done by people getting on top, and nobody's been held guilty till today.
Yeah, now of course in January you'll have the Ram Mandir inauguration. It's a Supreme Court decision. It's cross-party support for it. So really, all of these decisions at different moments in history have redefined the course of politics and the future of India. Let's talk a bit about Atal Bihari Vajpayee. A very, very interesting relationship between the Vajpayee government and the RSS. Very different from today, where clearly Narendra Modi is bigger than the RSS. The RSS had some veto powers over Vajpayee, in choice of finance minister, Jaswant Singh getting caught in the crosshairs of that. Your book looks at Vajpayee as this sort of moderate voice in the Hindu ecosystem. Who do you What do you think Vajpayee was driven by? Because it's not as if Vajpayee did not identify as a Swayamsevak. He did identify as a Swayamsevak.
Yes, he was a pracharak. Absolutely, he came from that stream. And I remember Mr. Advani often used to say this. But, and he would find this very galling in some way. We came through the same stream. He's seen as a moderate and I'm seen as a hawk.
Yes.
But there were various things, I think, that made him a moderate, Vajpayee. I think at heart he was a moderate. At the end of the day, of course, parliamentary politics, his friendships across parties, he had a relationship with Narasimha Rao, which was, again, I have documented it,
Yes.
fascinating how they
Yes.
helped each other politically. And but at the end, and he did so many flip-flops. If you look at the issues on the temple, again, I have documented, he said one thing one day, another thing another day, and yet people forgave him for it because somewhere they thought he was doing it under pressure of the RSS. But I think at the end of the day, Barkha, I say this at the end of my chapter, was Vajpayee an overrated prime minister? Because if you
Why
look
do
at
you
his
why do
because
you say that?
if you look at his tenure as prime minister, apart from going in for the nuclear test, there is nothing major that he can be, is term can be
Well,
seen
well, he attempts very serious institutional peace with Pakistan, not once, but
but it
twice.
didn't work.
He creates a humanistic philosophy for Kashmir. I
Yes.
mean, in fact, I would say Vajpayee and Modi are as different as can be. You can still find a lot of parallels between Indira Gandhi and Prime Minister Modi. I think you can't find any parallels between Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Prime Minister Modi.
Yes, he didn't want to be really, he didn't think that the nuclear test was his achievement. That was what was readied by Narasimha Rao. One Kashmir, he really wanted a breakthrough. He himself said that. But what I was going to say is, it is not what Vajpayee did, it was what Vajpayee was. That was his enduring legacy. And that was that India could only be run by consensus, a middle of the road approach. That's what made Vajpayee Vajpayee.
Well, that seems like a very different India today, but we'll come to that. You said, you raised the question, was Atal Bihari Vajpayee an overrated prime minister? But you clearly call someone else an underrated prime minister, and that is Manmohan Singh.
Yes, Manmohan Singh, underrated prime minister, but I also said he triumphed. And that was the one decision, the Indo-US nuclear deal, where Dr. Manmohan Singh asserted his prime minister authority in a way not seen in any other decision. So he had a side to him, political savvy, killer instinct, and it took over 3 years, 39 months to get this through. And of course, he had the backing of George Bush, the US president. He enjoyed a chemistry with him. Of course, chemistry is not the only thing that determines decisions when two countries' interests are at stake, but he did have a chemistry with him, which is a factor uh, for getting the deal through. But it is a very fascinating side of Dr. Manmohan Singh that came to the fore while he
How
pursued
do
this.
you explain that Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was ready to lose his prime minister's chair, stake his government on this nuclear deal that Mrs. Gandhi was not really a fan of, then became the same Manmohan Singh who would not resign when Rahul Gandhi was clearly undermining his authority? How do we reconcile these two Manmohan Singhs?
Look, I think this, as I say, on this one issue, it is like almost my baby. I have to see it through. And of course, he believed, a new relationship with the US, strategic relationship, India getting nuclear commerce, all those were factors. But I think somewhere at the end of it, he wanted to show through this one decision, I am my own man. I can be my own man. And he asserted in a way he'd not asserted otherwise. Whether it was, when Rahul Gandhi tore up that ordinance, many people felt he should have resigned, but he
Yeah.
didn't for whatever reason. And he allowed the political decisions to be taken by Sonia Gandhi and the party, and the administration and the governance was to be his responsibility. That those demarcations don't really work. When you're prime minister, there is nothing like politics and administration to be separated. But then it was a very unusual model of coalition that they
Yeah.
had.
Before I look at the present day politics, I want to go back to Indira Gandhi, the emergency, the beginning, as it were, of a I was going to say strongman politics, but she was the only woman prime minister we've ever had, and so strong woman, type A personality politics, a personification of power politics. How do you think, or why do you think she recovered from the emergency? And one of the nuggets in your book is actually R.K. Dhawan, considered the ultimate family loyalist, almost turned approver. And I think this story hasn't come out yet. So let's talk a little bit before we move and shift gears to present day politics about Mrs. Gandhi, R.K. Dhawan, and how she rebounds from the emergency.
R.K. Dhawan was a personal aide, we know that. Very
Yeah.
powerful. I remember when his father died, thousands and thousands of people had come. I'd gone there to see him. And, the who's who of India had come. He was so powerful. But after the emergency, when the Shah Commission was set up to probe the excesses of the emergency, and cases were lodged against Dhawan, allegations were made and inquiry was going on, Indira Gandhi, Sanjay Gandhi, Dhawan. Dhawan considered turning approver, and Sitaram Kesri called up Krishan Kant, who had by then joined the Janata Party, and said, Dhawan will come and see you. So Dhawan went across and saw Krishan Kant. This is a story from the Kant family that I'm telling you. And he talked about wanting to meet the Janata leaders, and Krishan Kant advised him. He said, Janata Party is not going to last very long, और आपने नमक खाया है, so I would advise you don't do it.
Very interesting. I mean, who would have thought that the ultimate family loyalist almost turned approval?
So he did not. The matter never was raised again, but he certainly considered doing it very seriously.
One last question about Indira Gandhi that is in your book, one story, is that after she gets routed in the elections, before she bounces back, she's having a conversation with the owners of Mohan Meekan, the manufacturers of Old Monk, that she wants to leave. She thinks she and the family should leave the country because she thinks the Janata Party government will come after her. And actually, they then give her a message saying, no, you don't have to leave India. We will not come after you. So she was actually considering either retiring to the mountains or saying, okay, let's find out. Maybe we should go outside India. I don't think this story has come out. So please tell us more about this.
Look, she was thinking of retiring to the Himalayas, taking a cottage somewhere and writing her memoirs. That certainly she was. And she had seen Morarji Desai. And she was worried not so much for herself, she was worried about Sanjay. And that is what, and they assured her no physical harm will come to Sanjay. But then there were these commissions of inquiry that got kicked into place. And it was the idea of Sanjay being targeted that got her to fight back. Had they left her alone, many people believe this, maybe history would have been different.
You mean if they left her alone, she might have retired. She might have actually retired.
Yes,
Let's talk about today. You have said, other than an epilogue, that you need time and distance from Prime Minister Modi's tenures to write about him. Fair enough. But you talk very interestingly about how the Prime Minister has converted the image of loneliness, of being solitary, into a political asset. And there's this one image you talk about of him meditating. There's that image, this meditative image of the Prime Minister as an example of how he has channeled an essential loneliness of being the Indian Prime Minister, which each of them has felt at different stages, into political advantage. Explain that.
Every prime minister several prime ministers talk to me about loneliness. And there's a question I ask them, that it is very lonely at the top. The buck stops with you. Ultimately, you take decisions that are going to affect millions of people. But Narendra Modi is one who turned it into an asset. It's an image of main hoon na. Rely on me. And when it's always struck me when he comes down the plane, Air India One, you'll find nobody behind him. Normally you have officials or other ministers coming down, always alone. In front of Sardar Patel's statue, alone. In a train in Japan, alone. In the Kedarnath cave, alone. So he wants to reinforce this, I'm alone there, but I'm there for you. Optics is very important for Narendra Modi. He's been a master at political marketing. Of course, he's used technology, new media, free data, all that very skillfully. But this thing, stands out. Nehru used the loneliness, to write his autobiography, the many, many books that he wrote in jail. But Narendra Modi has used it very differently.
You have said, I think, to the Indian Express that Modi is a phenomena of a changing India that we don't fully understand. That Modi as a phenomena is difficult right now to explain, even for the most erudite, experienced political observers.
I sometimes feel that Barkha, of course, he stands for the Hindutva, He stands for nationalism, national pride. He stands for social welfareism. He's of a kind not seen before for a long time. Of course, the UP also did it, but they have taken it to next step. He stands for OBC empowerment, OBC Prime Minister. He stands for, the communities out there, the lower, so-called the lower down communities, coming through the ranks and making it to the top position, what I call the subalternization of India. He has, but he also stands for, I think somewhere he recognizes the aspirational India. The small town India, the big village India identifies with him. We can also make it big. They have big dreams that he talks about. He doesn't talk about doom and gloom. But somewhere I feel it's all
I think you mentioned that whatever he does has to be on a big scale. Bhavya hona chahiye.
The word he used was bhavya. Everything has to be planned. Why don't we think big? Now, sometimes the big decisions lack the detailing, as with demonetization. But I think he resonates with an India changing. And that India and how it's changing, I think we have to probably understand a little more of.
I want to end.
When I go into the field and you go into the field, that is what we try and pick up.
Well, in the field, they tell you they love the fact that the prime minister is a bachelor prime minister without children, because they think that equals non-corruption. So many people in the field have told me this, that unka to koi hai hi nahi chhodne ke liye, to wo to hamare liye hi kar rahe hain. So it's very interesting that in America, for example, you need your president to be a family man or a family woman. But in India, there is a great amount of sort of laudits or plaudits, as it were, for the single man or the single woman, the element of renunciation. But Neerja, let me end with a story from your book where Karan Singh, the veteran Congress leader, tells you that he believes that Prime Minister Modi, despite the fact that the party rubbishes the Nehru legacy all the time, that he uses not Indira but Nehru as a reference point. So I want to end with that story.
He says that Karan Singh told me that he may not admit this, but I think Narendra Modi would like to be like Nehru and to surpass him.
What did you make of that analogy? Did you agree with it? Do you agree with it?
It's worth studying. It's worth
studying. Very interesting. Very interesting. And in fact, the images we're playing are of the Prime Minister's Museum. And you talk about how at the entrance, the two portraits that you saw, I think that's there in your book. One is of the first Prime Minister of independent India and one is of the current. And that juxtaposition really captures so much. Neerja Chowdhury, it's been fascinating. We could do this for hours, but time is up. The book is excellent. Please do pick up, if you haven't already, Neerja Chowdhury's book that takes a look at how the prime ministers of India take decisions. It's full of anecdotes, nuggets. Even if you're not a journalist or you're not a politician, it's very accessible. It's delicious. That is the word I would use for it. Thank you so much, Neerja Chowdhury. Always a pleasure. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.